Good afternoon, you guys, and what's up, and welcome back to the Prime Vanguard channel. Today, I'm going to be featuring you and showing you my Knight of Fury Agravain deck profile post Twinkle Melody. So this deck profile is one that, as you guys know, Agravain is a card that, I experiment with here and there. He was one of my first deck profiles actually from when I started the channel, and I'm very happy to see this card make a comeback in the game. For those of you guys that do not know, by the way, at the time that I'm making this video, the Gurgawit/Percival choice restriction is now in effect in the Western, so in America. That means you are no longer allowed to play Sunrise Ray Knight Gurgawit and Bluish Flame Liberator Percival together anymore at all. It is not allowed in Standard, or I don't really care about Premium, but I know in Standard you can't do anymore. So therefore, with that happening and all the new support that Gold Paladin got from Divine Lightning Radiance, people are now going to start paying attention to Agravain, or I know that we got Spectral Duke coming out, but I don't care about Spectral Duke. I care about Agravain. Agravain is here and now, and guys, I gotta tell you, I am loving it. And this deck has just so many more unique features about it, and with the introduction of Percival and some of the newer cards from the set, a lot of the issues that this deck had prior from when I first made it has been fixed. And a lot of the issues that it had before, they're still there, just because of some natural things like this being an Excel deck, so powers and numbers is things sometimes. But with the way that I rock this deck, and let me show you how I rock this deck, you guys are gonna love it, and you guys are gonna love how well this deck plays. And honestly, it can keep up with the meta. It's really good. But without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and show y'all how I get down with Agravain. So let's get started. Alright, you guys, so to get started, first we play 4 copies of Knight of Fury Agravain. Obviously the main focus of the entire deck. Agravain's still really amazing. It's been a while since he's been given the spotlight, so I'm going to go ahead and go over his effect just one more time. Agravain has 2 abilities that are active on the Vanguard circle. His first one is when it attacks, you may counterblast 1, put all of your rear guards into the soul, and then based off the number of calls you made this turn, look at the top cards of your deck equal to the number of calls made, and superior call any number of rear guards you like. And then the second ability is Vanguard Circle Act, you Soul Blast 12 until the end of the card fight. Your opponent cannot call normal units. So that's a pretty big deal. For those of you guys who don't understand, the first effect is the main thing that we really care about. Our first ability allows us to, based on the number of calls we make in the turn, pretty much control and manipulate our deck so that we can create our board and keep getting more multi-attacks. On top of the fact that we are an Excel deck, we can call our units to our Excel markers and manipulate how they play, and since we're moving everything into the soul, we're going to be able to get a fresh, clean slate, literally, so that we can manipulate and control how we want to make our columns and boards when facing our opponent. Now, the 12 soul ability is one that rarely happens. I think that maybe only like one game I've ever gotten the 12 soul ability off. There is actually a build for it, and if you guys want me to feature that 12 soul Agravain build, just go ahead and put it down in the comment section below, and I'll give you guys a deck for that. But this deck is just focused on the most aggressive version of Agravain that I can make with the resources that I have and just my playtesting of the deck. So the first effect is really what we care about. It's not much, but being able to provide your ability for the soul for the cost of your rearguard units, and then being able to feed up to your second skill is still very helpful for Agravain. Agravain's ability just gets taken to a whole new level because now that the rearguards that we have for Gold Paladin are just a lot stronger, which fixed its main issue that it had prior, which was you got more calls but you didn't get any power. But since the rearguards can power themselves up and enable more calls because of their own abilities, this card just became a lot more consistent. So Agravain is definitely a card you need to watch out for because the number of multi-attacks you can get with this is just insane. Moving on to our next grade 3, we play 4 copies of Bluish Flame Liberator Percival. The drama, the tea, this is all it. All because of this card right here. Now, for those of you guys that do not know, Bluish Flame Liberator Percival has a few effects of his own. His first ability, which is on the Vanguard circle, all of your units on an additional rearguard get 5,000 power, but that's not what we're here for. Nobody cares about that. It's the second effect we're here for. And the second ability is when this unit's placed, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, counterblast 1, ditch a card from your hand, get an addition imaginary gift XL, and then search your deck or your drop zone and call up to 1 Oath Liberator Aglovale. This is all that we're here for. This card enables so much with Agravain. This card fixes all the issues that Agravain had. Not only is this card a good secondary backup grade 3 to ride, because the first effect, it's okay, it's not terrible, it's actually really good depending on what you have on set, but the second ability, for Agravain, it gives you 2 calls a turn, an additional Excel marker to create stronger columns, and you're thinning out your deck. Also, Aglovale is able to be accessed in the deck and the drop zone. So not only do you have to compress your deck more, not only is that what it allows you to do, but you always have access to Aglovale as long as you have access to this card. And with the way that this deck plays, since we can thin out our deck so much and call a lot of units, we always have access to Percivial. There's never been a time or a game where I was like, damn, I wish I could be seeing this card. Never happened to me, and it just improves the consistency of the deck so much. This is honestly a staple in all gold paladin decks, in my opinion. You have to play this with Agravain. It's just so free with what Agravain can do. And with all the extra support that we have in the deck that leads towards the strategy, it just fixed everything. Percivial is really a truly good gold paladin card. I'm really surprised that, honestly, it was a double R. It could have been the VR or the triple R, but this card is just amazing with gold paladin, and Agravain is just blessed to be able to have this unit. For our next grade 3, we play 2 copies of Knight of the Flying Rings Edmund. So Edmund, for those of you guys that do not know, was a rare card introduced in Divine Lightning Radiance. He has 2 abilities. The first one, which is when placed on the Guardian Circle, if your Vanguard's grade 3, he has 10,000 power. The second effect is when it attacks, you put a rearguard into the soul, get 10,000 power. At the end of the battle, put this unit back into your hand. So this card is overall just really helpful with Agravain. Not only does it fuel the soul strategy for this deck, or the soul for your abilities, it puts itself back into hand, it gets power, and you're getting extra defense. Now Agravain, in order for you to get like the full value of that card, you want to make at least 3 to 4 calls a turn, and having units like this that pump themselves back into the hand, or pump up your soul as well, is just helpful to have, because now you have a card that you potentially can continuously for the rest of the game always be able to call back. And since you're putting units back into the soul, which does not affect Agravain's ability at all, you want to note that, it's very important. You are filling up the soul for Agravain and your other abilities so that you don't have to worry about soul cost. And the fact that he works in the Guardian Circle as well too, because in most gold paladin decks, your grade 3s are the way you want to go, because your grade 3s are the ones with the highest attack power. And like I said before, most Excel decks have always had the issue of power, but Edmund gets 10k on its own on Excel marker, and whether you play 1 or 2, you're going to be making numbers with this card. So overall, I feel like Edmund's a nice tech to have in the deck. This card can honestly be anything you want. You can play a Sagramore, Pelennor, you can play the Platinum Ezel, but I felt like focusing this deck as much as Agravain as possible, and I have to say I don't regret my decision playing Edmund at all. Moving on to our next grade 3, I play 2 copies of Full Cavalier Dragon. Full Cavalier Dragon, not as relevant as it used to be just because we now have Percivial and Aglovale, but still helpful with the deck. This card is also, in my opinion, another flex slot. I mainly play this card for its ability before, which is on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you Soul Blast 1, look at the top card of your deck, call a unit, and this unit gives your Vanguard 5,000 power. Now remember, since Agravain moves everything into the soul, he never gets a boost, so Agravain is always normally that one attack that, unless you're playing against like Protect or another Excel deck, doesn't really ever hit, because he's just, 1,000 short from a Force deck. So this card fixes that problem and gives you an additional call for the cost of a Soul Blast. This way we're not using our Counter Blast, which we want to use for other skills such as Percivial. And Cavalier just still assists with that. Again, I say it's a flex slot because realistically, truth be told guys, as long as you have Agravain, Percivial, and Aglovale, you really don't need anything else. This deck can literally be like literally everything else. That was just your main like plussing engine there. I mean, there are still like, I guess, some cool key cards you want to play, but I've played so many variations of this deck, and as long as I had Aglovale and Percivial, I just knew I was in a good spot. But Cavalier, I like to play it still just because this card is really free and it does help Agravain hit some numbers. So if you are playing against a Force deck and you haven't pulled a damage trigger on them yet, Agravain's attack will count for something. Even if it is a 5k guard for a 1 to pass, it still counts for something, so that this way all of your attacks count and you're not relying on a trigger to hit anything. Now for our grade 2s. So since you guys know we're playing Percivial, obviously we play 2 copies of Oath Liberator Aglovale. So Oath Liberator Aglovale, overall a really amazing card too. Just the whole Legion set is just really amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and go over Aglovale's abilities so you guys are all caught up or informed. Aglovale has 2 effects, his Vanguard ability, which is when he's placed on the Vanguard circle, you counterblast 1, check top 3, call up to 1 card from among them, and then place the rest on the bottom of your deck. His second ability is when it attacks, you put a rearguard into the soul, and it gets 10,000 power, and at the end of the battle, it bounces back to hand. So, Aglovale's first ability is not one that we care so much for because I rarely ever put this card in the Vanguard circle. I mean, he's just a second best ride in case we don't get another grade 2 that we play in the deck. The second ability that he has is very similar to Edmund, and everything I stated for Edmund is pretty much the same reason for Aglovale, therefore making him reusable throughout the game for the additional calls that Agravain needs or to hit that cap, so that you can this way check more cards from the top of your deck to increase the number of calls. So pretty much the same thing that I said about Edmund goes for Aglovale. For our next grade 2, I play 2 copies of Knight of Hard Work Allenor. So Allenor, like in my last Agravain deck, is still here. He's brought down a bit, but still a very relevant card. For those of you guys that do not know what Allenor does, he has 2 effects. His first ability is, when it attacks based off the number of calls you perform this turn, he gains effects. If you made 2 calls, he gains 5,000 power. If you made 4 calls, he gains 10,000 power. So like I said back then with Allenor, nothing's changed. This card is just another beat stick for the deck, because again, you really want to hit those high numbers so that your attacks matter. And thanks to Aglovale and Percivial and the other cards we play in this deck, that's very easy to find Excel markers and make space for this card, because it also puts itself into the soul at the end of the battle that it battles. So thank goodness that we have this card and helps us with our numbers. But Allenor's position in this deck hasn't changed. I just brought it down because I really need to make space for Aglovale and some new cards I really wanted to play. So still a really good staple card in the deck to have. Just for our next grade 2, I play 3 copies of Knight of Springlight Perimore. So Perimore, this card is amazing. Honestly, this is our Berserk Dragon for Gold Paladins, and with its effect, it really did help out everything that we needed to do. So Knight of Springlight Perimore has 2 abilities. Those 2 abilities are the Act on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle ability. Once per turn, you may Counterblast 1, call a grade 2 or less card from your hand to a Rearguard Circle, and draw a card. His second effect states that when he's placed on the Rearguard Circle or the Guardian Circle, when placed by a card ability, this unit gets 5,000 power and 5,000 shield. So the 5,000 power, 5,000 shield effect is good to have because it makes it, again, this card makes numbers itself, which is very cool that all of our cards now in the deck can make numbers over 13, so we don't have the issues that we had before. But the fact that this card gets you another call for a draw on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle is really what I play this card for. It's honestly such a good card to have. With the extra utility, the fact that it's an act ability, which is the most important thing and the reason why I kept this card at the number that I do, is just helpful. And it really helped Agravain with everything that I need, because whenever you see it going to next turn, as long as you have this card, you know that you're going to get 1 additional call and you'll be able to turn on your Dindranes and your other call on effects. This card really just took the place of Sagramore, because in order for me to play Sagramore, I would have to drop more grade 2s, and I just felt like, well, I don't want to have a deck full of all grade 3s because those grade 3s just give me more utility but not power. So thank goodness for Knight of Springlight's Perimore being a grade 2 and getting power, even for those for the turn having the act ability that it does. So I'm really grateful to have that. But Perimore is just, I feel like it's a staple of Agravain. I'm still testing it out how many I need, but I feel like 3 is a good slot to have this at. For my last grade 2, I play 4 copies of Liberator of the Flute Escrad. So as I stated in my last Agravain deck profile, this card is still a staple for the deck, and it has the following ability. Its ability is on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle when placed if your Vanguard is Knight of Fury Agravain or Liberator of the Flute Escrad, you may look at the top card of your deck and superior call that unit. If you called this unit this turn, you may Counterblast 1 and get 5,000 power until the end of the turn. So this is just a free card for Agravain. It's literally a call to get another call so that you can at least get 2 calls this turn from Agravain. It's not controlled calling, but the fact that it's a free call with no counterblast in the early game helps us with our rushing, and it does help with our Agravain calling. So I feel like this card's still a staple in the deck. I think 4 is perfect simply because whenever you see it, you know that you're just going to get more free calls, and it just helps out since the fact that the counterblast is optional and I can choose if I need the power or if I just want it for the call. I rarely use this counterblast for power because I'll just throw him on a rear guard with a column, or I'll throw him on an Excel marker, but it's a good option to have. That's why this card is just still a staple in the deck. There are other cards that I want to try out over Escrad, but for right now, this is just what I just came up with on the spot for the deck after playtesting with what I have so far. Moving on to our grade 1s, I played 2 copies of Relentless Knight Lulach. So this card here has 2 effects. It's the Vanguard Circle. When placed, you discard a card from your hand to draw a new one. And then the second ability is on the Rearguard Circle. When your grade 3 Vanguard is placed during the main phase, you may put this unit into your soul and countercharge 1. So this card is honestly a tech slot for me. I'm still figuring out which grade 1s I want. I never really liked Tron. I only played it just because we didn't have our own grade 3 searcher at the time. And The other grade 1 that we had, Brenius, I only liked Brenius because the deck of Agravain that I was playing at the time, or the one you saw in my video prior, it just felt slow and it didn't do anything on the Vanguard circle, and I was like, damn, I really wish we just had a card that did something on the Vanguard circle. And then we finally got it. We got Gorbaduck, we got Tron, and then we have this card. So this card is still testing in my mind. I only play this for the Vanguard effect and in case my opponent decides to damage deny me, because if I do decide to use Aglovale's skill or if I use Perimore's skill, they can choose not to attack me and go into the next turn, but I can just call this card out with Perimore, get my draw, and then going into the next turn and ride Agravain, I can move this into the soul and get that counter charge, because you need that one counter blast in order to activate Agravain's ability. So this card is just for those scenarios that ever happen in case my opponent tries to be cute, but Lulach is I'm still figuring it out, so I'm just playing 2 of it right now. For our next grade 1, we play 4 copies of Listener of Truth Dindrane. So I don't feel like there's much to be said here. By the way, yes, I've had the congratulations version promos for a long time, so I'm glad to see that they spiked up in price, but anyways, so Listener of Truth Dindrane, I don't feel like there's much to be said here. She's the on call, you Soul Blast 1, you get to draw a card, or you get to counter charge 1 and get 3000 power. Still one of the best recovery options for this deck. You get to choose whatever you need, and because Agravain makes so much soul, you never have to worry about your soul cost going to the wrong place, because 9 times out of 10, you're just using this to get Dindrane back. Finally, for my last grade 1, I play Stronghold of the Black Chains Hoel. So Stronghold of the Black Chains Hoel, again, this is another, like, the grade 1s in this deck is where it gets tricky, because your grade 1s whenever you're deck building are supposed to be your ones that offer you the most effect or offer you a good, resource management bonus. And Hoel he helps with more power, he gives you more power, and it goes to the on-call unit. But I'm having a hard time deciding if I want to keep this card in my deck, because I think I'm just going to switch over to Gorbaduck and just play it like that, or Jeffrey. But I'm just playing Hoel right now simply because I don't have those cards and I'm just giving it a try. But for those of you guys that do not know what Hoel does, I'll get to its effect now. It's continuous. Your other unit in the same column as this unit that was placed this turn gets 5000 power. And if you have Advanced the Black Chains Kaiden on your Vanguard rearguard circle, that unit gets 10,000 power instead of 5,000. So we don't play Kaiden in this deck anymore simply because they're just better grade 2s that we have now. Perimore just took a spot, and Aglovale is just a necessity in the deck at the ratio he's at. So you don't ever get the second effect, you're just playing this card for the additional 5k that it offers units. And then keep in mind that this is not like a once per turn effect, so anytime a new unit were to enter by this card, you just get that 5000 power bonus. But since we don't have any battle phase calling where this card stays on place because we're not Gurglet, the extra 5k that this card continuously gives out doesn't really matter. So Hoel is definitely a spot that I'm playing around with, but I'm just keeping it right now because it helps make numbers. Now moving on to our triggers. So our trigger lineup has changed a bit. I'm now playing 2 copies of Flame of Victory. So as you guys have noticed throughout the deck profile, a lot of my units now have the effect where they can gain power, or to where I'm making extra columns with Excel 1 or 2. So having the critical in the deck now makes your attack scary. Before with Agravain, since you were just focused on getting resources and calls, you weren't focused on power, or you always had the issue of power, you had no choice but to play like 8 fronts that your attacks mattered. But because our rearguards, like I said before, can get the power now, we can put these criticals onto our rearguard or onto our Vanguard, and 9 times out of 10 our opponent doesn't expect it, simply because they're just so used to seeing all the front triggers that we play that they're not going to think you're going to drop a crit. So right now I'm just holding on to 2 crits in the deck because I do have space for them, and I do feel like they come in handy sometimes. I definitely have caught some people off guard with playing 2 of these, but I feel like 2 is good. If you want to play 8 fronts, by all means go ahead. If you want to actually add a draw trigger and play another front, I say go ahead too. This deck does have a bit does have sometimes a card advantage problem if you're not getting the pieces you need from Agravain or your calls. But so like I said, this deck is a flex slot. Everything in this deck can honestly be changed right now. This is just the variation that I've been playing for the last 2 weeks, testing it out. But I've been playing a lot of decks. So 2 Flame of Victories because crits are good. Next up, I play 4 copies of Halo Shield Mark. And then last but not least, I play 4 heal triggers. I'm not brave enough to not play heal triggers. Heal triggers are good. You want the 20k shield against those big attackers, so I play 4 heals. Alright you guys, so now obviously I'm going to let you guys know how I feel about the markers. So the main marker I go for this deck is XL1. That's right, you heard me, I play XL1. Now, hear me out before you guys start tripping. So you're probably wondering why am I playing XL1? And the reason why I choose XL1 for this deck again is because most of your matchups demand for it. Now, Agravain, before you had to go XL2 because you needed the resources, the pieces, but the 5k power just never felt like enough. And going XL1 with Agravain prior, you were missing out on a lot of resources. But this is where this guy becomes a big deal, because thanks to this card and thanks to this card calling out this card, we can now make relevant columns. Our columns are now strong, they're relevant, and the extra power just helps solidify that. And then with just every card that we have in the deck that gives us back utility and resources and the front triggers, XL1 is just the best way to go. That 10,000 power matters now. When you're playing against decks like Himiko, Astral Poet, or just any Melody deck, or Bermuda Triangle, just any Force deck or any deck now, they never see the XL1 coming. The matchups that you play XL1 with do matter. I'm not saying that, I'll never say that XL2 is bad. It really just comes down to the matchup because the numbers that you make. If I'm going first and I'm going against an XL deck and I have the advantage, or I have that at least one counterblast when I go to my Agravain turn, I'm going XL1. If I'm at a disadvantage, then obviously I'll go XL2 because XL2 will catch me back up. And then thanks to Percivial and Aglovale, I can use XL2, draw 2 that turn and catch back up in the game. But 9 times out of 10, or yeah, 9 times out of 10 when I played this deck, I've always gone XL1 because my deck naturally, with Agravain's calling and just deck thinning, gets me the triggers, gets me the pieces, gets me the cards, builds up my board. Like, I have nothing to worry about with this deck. These 2 cards really did almost solve everything that was wrong with Agravain. And because of the new Gold Paladin support like Perimore, Edmund, Dindrane, and the other cards that we play, like, power is not the biggest issue in the deck, and if it does become an issue, then XL1 giving us the additional 10k power and the front triggers that we play, which is 6 of them, it solves everything. So XL1 is definitely, I recommend that you try it. Obviously, if you're too scared to try it, or if you back out of trying it, then go XL2. XL2 always solid, you know, XL2 Percivial, pot agreed. But XL1 is low-key rogue. I feel like it's really good not to pass up or not to try once. I say go XL1 if you're playing best 2 out of 3, and if you really don't feel like it's working for you or not working out, then play something else. But I'm rocking with XL1 with this deck. Alright you guys, thank you so much for watching today's deck profile. Today's deck profile featurette was Agravain. I'm really happy, I was really excited to show you guys this deck. I'm very passionate about Gold Paladins, and I just love seeing Agravain finally being back at the top. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, I have a lot more deck profiles coming out and a lot more content coming out soon. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. Also, if your friends think about building Agravain, share this video with them. All of my decks are templates for you guys to get started off with. So I'm gonna head out and work on some more decks, y'all. See ya.